I'm going to start with Mr. Barrett, I'm going to go to Ms. Khalid, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Cooper. Mr. Barrett, go ahead. We are in committee business.
Thank you, Chair. Given that the Prime Minister has appointed Mark Carney as Chair of the Liberal Party Task Force on Economic Growth, and this position shields Mark Carney from Canada's public disclosure and conflict of interest laws, as he is not deemed a public office holder, and Canadians have a right to know about the financial and corporate interests of individuals shaping economic policy that impacts their everyday lives. The committee called Mark Carney to testify for 3 hours within 14 days of this motion being adopted.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just turn to you so that I'm not distracted, if that's okay. So we saw over the summer, Pierre Poilievre had to remove an advertisement because it contained stock footage of Russian fighter jets doing a training mission in Canadian skies, Serbian school children, and homes being built in Slovenia. Pierre claimed not to know anything about the far-right group Diagolon when he spent a lot of time snuggling up with them. And he was photographed with them and some of its members in the spring, and he had previously denounced them for comments made by their founder about his wife a couple of years ago. Pierre and his Conservative Party have faced criticism during this summer for calling the Holiday Inn lavish and swanky, whereas he himself had hosted a fundraiser there in that exact same location earlier in January. We've had members of Parliament in that caucus, such as Michelle Ferrari, who had to delete a tweet after claiming that in Peterborough, the cost of living crisis has driven parents to traffic their own children. Michelle was found to have posted a doctored global news report that edited out most of the video because it was critical of her. There was a weird case of online social media bots that were posing to be Pierre Poilievre supporters and were trying to boost the Conservative Party's messaging about a rally in Northern Ontario. In recent days, reports have come out about a right-wing Indian media personality calling for the Indian government to wage an information campaign in support of Pierre Poilievre. The FBI has seized a Russian-backed fake news site which posted anti-Trudeau and pro-Poilievre content. And I'm listing all of this, Chair, because this is exactly what this motion is about. It's about a whole bunch of misinformation, disinformation. It's about a whole bunch of nothingness.
So, Mr. Cooper, on the amendment proposed by Mr. Barrett, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I fully support the amendment put forward by Mr. Barrett, but I do have to say that when it comes to issues of disinformation, particularly from foreign state actors, the Liberals have absolutely no credibility whatsoever on this issue. We have a Prime Minister that covered up Beijing's interference in our democracy.
Go ahead on your point of order.
Thank you. The amendment that we're talking about right now is to remove the partisanship, so I would just ask him to get back on track and be a little bit relevant and speak to the motion.
Yeah, I've allowed a lot of latitude on both sides, Mr. Fisher. You know that, and I expect that Mr. Cooper will bring it home. Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
Mr. Chair, and before I was so rudely interrupted,
Indeed.
Rude indeed.
We're going to stop the crosstalk here, please. Thank you.
This is Liberals and this government have absolutely no credibility when it comes to foreign interference, because this is a Prime Minister that turned a blind eye to Beijing's interference in 2 federal elections. This is a Prime Minister that was repeatedly briefed about Beijing's disinformation campaign. This is a Prime Minister who turned a blind eye, and his officials turned a blind eye, when a sitting member of Parliament, Kenny Chiu, was specifically targeted in a sophisticated campaign of disinformation using various online platforms by the Beijing-based regime, contributing to his defeat in the 2021 election. And in fact, the Liberals didn't just turn a blind eye to the campaign against Kenny Chiu that had real direct electoral consequences. They actually amplified that disinformation, spreading lies about Kenny Chiu's private members bill to establish a foreign influence registry, something that CSIS and national security experts have long said was an important tool to combat disinformation and other foreign interference activities from hostile foreign states. And this is a prime minister who, out of direct electoral concern, allowed a Liberal candidate, but now member for Don Valley North, to stand even after he had been briefed that Beijing had actively interfered on his behalf to help him secure the Liberal nomination. And when I say that the Prime Minister made a decision to allow that to happen out of direct electoral concern, those are not my words. Those are the conclusions of Madam Justice Hogue. In other words, according to the findings of Madam Justice Hogue in her first report, we have a Prime Minister that put his partisan interests, his personal interests, ahead of our national security and ahead of our democracy. That is the record of this Prime Minister. And
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
On your point of order, Mr. Fisher.
Please, relevance on the amendment of removing a sentence or two on the amendment. Thank you.
I'm gonna ask Mr. Cooper to stick to the topic at hand here, and
Next.
yeah, and I expect you to do that. So go ahead, sir.
it simply illustrates why one party is singled out.
That's right.
That's what I'm getting to when we talk about the total lack of credibility, and not just a lack of credibility, but a disturbing record with respect to this Prime Minister and how he has handled things. And of course, I spent much of the last 2 years as the Vice Chair of the Procedure and House Affairs Committee working to shine a light on foreign interference. And to Mr. Barrett's point, the Liberals have been dragged kicking and screaming. They obstructed repeatedly our efforts to get to the bottom of foreign interference. So far did they go that the Prime Minister appointed his ski buddy, David Johnson, to serve as his fake rapporteur, who then hired a bunch of Liberal hacks, including Liberal donor Sheila Block, as the counsel. Now, his report, when he came to committee, the Prime Minister's ski buddy, Mr. Johnson, he had no credibility. His report was ripped to shreds within minutes of questioning from members, no, of course not Liberal members who tried to cover for him, but the members of the other opposition parties. And then, of course, we have, as Mr. Caputo said, a Prime Minister who won't name the 11 compromised MPs. In fact, speaking of the Public Safety Minister, I was at the very committee Mr. Caputo was back in June when I asked Mr. LeBlanc, Minister LeBlanc, were any of those 11 MPs sitting in Justin Trudeau's cabinet? And he wouldn't answer.
We don't know.
We don't know. I think it's quite telling that the minister refused to answer. So, look, the bottom line is we'll support this motion. I support the amendment. I support the motion. But I will not stand and take lectures from the Liberals on matters of foreign interference, because I'll put our record of standing up to foreign interference any day against the record of their efforts to cover up sophisticated campaigns that benefited the Prime Minister and benefited the Liberal Party.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooper.